So my friend Joe got me this arcade stick as a gift. It's one of those pre-built machines that's filled with like 1,000 games, or in this case, 3,333. I played it once when I got it 2 years ago and never touched it again. This 25 by 9 inch hunk of wires has just been awkwardly sitting in my apartment since then. But I do remember the strange experience I had when I played it. So I decided to dive back into whatever the hell this thing is. First of all, the device itself is really big. Of course, that's for the 2 sets of joysticks for multiplayer, but I don't think you're going to be playing this thing enough with 2 people to justify something that can't fit on most nightstands. Just move your coffee table close to the TV, take up an HDMI port, and then the 2 of you can hunch over really close together and play Ninja Turtles for 10 minutes. Buttons and sticks are pretty good. Played some Marvel vs. Capcom with them, and I found no problems. This thing came with a power cord and an HDMI cable. HDMI is fine and preferable for most people, but you'd think something with only retro games would have some kind of AV cable for CRTs. Instead, we have a VGA port. I guess it's more for modding than display. Other than that, you get a headphone jack and 2 USB ports. I guess you can plug in extra controllers for 4-player games, or if you had a double USB connector, you can use this as an arcade stick for modern consoles? Yeah, I'm not doing that. I was nervous about plugging this thing into my Elgato. You're gonna need headphones if you want to actually hear the games, because the only audio on these things are some crappy internal speakers. I can actually feel this thing vibrate when I play without headphones. You'll notice this has a Mario Galaxy 2 theme. My friend Joe told me he chose this one since we have a lot of nostalgia attached to that era of gaming, which is really nice. But Mario Galaxy didn't come out for the arcade, idiot. I found an Amazon listing that I'm pretty sure is for this device, or at least a variation of it. Ideal gift for allergies. Family reunion. I guess the family left. These 50-year-olds aren't even playing. They're just really excited for KOF 97. Even these bad photoshops show how cumbersome this thing is. It takes up a whole coffee table. Alright, let's get to the actual games. And the first thing that greets you on this machine every time you turn it on is 89 Denyo Kyusai Uranai. Well, might as well try it. I mean, what the hell, it's the first game. Oh my god, that music. I hope all the games aren't like this. What is this, trivia? Is it a text adventure? I've had to put in dates like twice. Is it supposed to be my birthday? What a great way to break in your new arcade stick. A Japanese-only text-based NES game. Alright, let's keep going. 1941, 1944, 1943. Bro, how many fucking years are there? I guess I'll try 1999. Hoo boy, that's a lot of text. Can we just get through this so I can see the game? Honestly, that's a really clever way to make a profile picture. Bro, are you kidding me? A Japanese-only NES board game? That's what you put on this arcade stick? Attack Funny Beans. Oh man, this is an arcade classic. What are the funny beans in this scenario? God, we haven't gotten out of the A's and already this thing is a fucking mess. Like, do you want to play Asterix or Asterix? The naming on this thing is just weird. NES games will have parentheses Japan in the title, even if they aren't in Japanese. Like Batman is the arcade game, but Batman Japan is the NES game, even though it's in English. Why not just put NES in the title? Why not have these in their own category? You can also see how badly this thing butchers NES games. They seem to have some weird smoothing filter on them by default, and the sound quality is god-awful. When you play a game you're familiar with, you can really see how bad it is. Joe, you had better gotten this thing for cheap, because I really appreciate the gift. I guess the confusing titles lead to more discovery. I mean, bad organization is not a positive, but I guess it can lead you to find some cool arcade games you've never heard of, like Act Fancer Cybernetic Hyper Weapon. I think this game might be Japanese. You know, there are a lot of just plain duplicates on this, and then a bunch of those duplicates are under different names. I would be more forgiving if there were like 10,000 games, but no, it's 3,333. We should be a little more selective. I do appreciate that this thing has a lot of Japanese arcade games, because as someone who's already played a lot of the retro classics, obscure Japanese stuff is the only thing that gets me off. Like Akenbender, a reimagining of Space Invaders that makes it cute, colorful, and adds a bunch of power-ups. It actually makes Space Invaders fun. How about Answer? Okay, now this looks insane and Japanese. Isn't that the little gerbil boy from those kids' books? What the hell, Goku? Okay, well, it's a trivia game, I guess. I'm a genius. Fuck this game. Another positive about this thing is being able to play the great arcade games stuck in licensing hell, like Capcom's Alien vs. Predator. Arguably one of the best beat-em-ups Capcom has ever made, this game is a must-play. The only time this game got re-released was on that fucking stupid $200 Capcom arcade stick that's shaped like the Capcom logo. This thing is way better than that thing, and this thing still sucks. We also got Cadillacs and Dinosaurs, another licensed Capcom classic that will probably never get re-released. But look at all these versions of it. Crazy 1, Bullet, Lobster, with the text going off screen. Well, I gotta try Lobster. Alright, seems normal. That's the Lobster. So each of these titles is a different ROM hack of Cadillacs and Dinosaurs, which is cool, it's a great game, but why does Cadillac and Dinosaurs get so many different versions? Maybe we'll find some more later in this collection. I will say, some of the demo screens in the menu are just terrible. Like sometimes it'll mostly be black, and the actual game will only flash for like a millisecond. You know, I gotta see if they have The Simpsons Arcade on here. I mean, that's something that everyone getting one of these would want to play. Let's see, SIMP? Wait, they only have The Simpsons Bowling? Do they really not have The Simpsons on here? Oh, the Olsons is The Simpsons Arcade. It's under the fucking Olsons? How is that name even tangentially related to The Simpsons? Well, were they trying to hide it from copyright? Motherfucker, you had Simpsons Bowling. I mean, it's the Simpsons arcade game. It's fun and it plays well, but how the hell is someone supposed to find it unless they just scroll through the entire list? So I checked Simpsons Bowling. It's actually the Simpsons arcade game, but you can only play as Marge. It just automatically picks her. So the only thing with Simpsons in the title is a messed up version of the arcade game, and the regular version is under the Olsons. Out of all the games to fuck up the labeling, this is the worst one. Angry King Kong sure looks familiar. I can't explain it, but this feels Chinese. This hammer is here to trick you because if you try to grab it, you'll die from the height. Maybe these kinds of products don't want to put in Nintendo games just to be safe, so they use a ripoff. Well, after Angry Kong, now we have Big King Kong 3 and Big Kong. Big Kong seems to be a different knockoff of Donkey Kong. This one starting you off in the Pie Factory with a Donkey Kong that lost a little weight and his nose. So when you beat the Pie Factory, it takes you to the first stage with a ladder that skips the entire stage. Bullshit. Crazy Kong. I swear, if the actual Donkey Kong is on here, it would be so funny. Oh, there it is. 4 different ripoffs, and they still have the original. Why? You just had to fill 3,333 slots? Well, it's the original arcade version, although Mario doesn't make his little walk and jump sound effects. They even have the NES version. Oh, just 2 versions? You sure you guys don't want to put in Lobster Edition? The Rise of Orb. I don't know how Donkey Kong got that name. Can't forget its sequel, Rise of the Scary Ball Jr. It is fun to discover the obscure fighting games like Alien Challenge. It plays pretty well, but the characters don't really stand out too much, like Jean-Paul the Ninja. Except for Drew, the weirdly ripped clown. Goes to show how important character designs are in fighting games, because even if the gameplay and graphics are good, if the characters just fall under generic archetypes, nobody will care. Justice for Drew. Look, I know I probably glossed over some great arcade games on this thing, but a lot of these games are very similar. There's only a few that have truly unique gameplay. The rest can be boiled down to shmups, beat-em-ups, puzzle games, or fighting games. That's why the only reason to go to an arcade today is to play the games with a unique control scheme, something that you can't just play on a controller. And that leads to the most disappointing part about this thing, the lack of unique controls. I fucking love Arkanoid, but you need to play it with a dial. Regular control sticks just don't work. It's necessary to play some classics like Tempest, Arkanoid, Thwackery. I would have looked past a lot of this thing's faults if it had a working dial. It's not like you don't have room for it. It's a real shame because they have a bunch of these paddleball style games, but no knob. It's like rubbing it in your face. Here's some advice for the Chinese developers.
安装一个旋钮
Biomechanical Toy. Now this is a really sweet run and gun with great graphics. You play as Injas. Now that's a marketable name. You know what's great about arcade games? You can tell if they're worth playing in the first 2 minutes. If the game doesn't feel good to control, looks like shit, or is too confusing, you know it's not worth your time. These games were short and hard, like me. But they were all competing for your quarters in the arcade. So if it didn't hook you right away, you can always go back to the classics. Speaking of classics, Bishi Bashi is one of my favorite arcade games. It's like Mario Party with just the mini-games, and the games revolve around 3 color-coded buttons. It's too bad the buttons don't work on this thing. You'd think that the top 3 buttons would be set up like the arcade, but no, the red and blue buttons are reversed. If you know Bishi Bashi, you know that the position of the buttons is crucial. So even if you were to color code the buttons, it would still throw you off. There's no messing around in Bishi Bashi, so you can't be considering the reverse order of the buttons. What a shame. This would actually be a great reason to buy this thing, but you're better off just playing the PS1 version. So I checked to see if I could change the buttons on this thing, but I couldn't see anything on the menu. Turns out there's a settings button on the back of the machine. Isn't that more work? So the default is that A is on the bottom left, and then it goes B, C, D, E, F in the order that you expect. Well, I just want a simple ABC on the top and D, E, F on the bottom. So let's just set the A button. Bullshit. It reads the button wrong. Like, I don't know what to do here. So the thing counts this button as this button, so even if I got the diagram lined up properly, wouldn't the buttons still be out of order? You would need some kind of math formula to figure this out. Alright, back to the games. Diet Go-Go. That name just calls to me. Well, it's just Bubble Bobble, only today this would be considered a fetish thing. But let's not judge. Maybe this was a fetish thing back then too. You know, I never realized how influential Bubble Bobble was until I stumbled upon like 5 games that ripped it off. Like Jump Kids. Isn't that Baby Herman from Roger Rabbit? Kind of crazy how a game so influential back then just kind of falls into obscurity. But I mean, even Pac-Man isn't that popular anymore, so Mario was like the only one from the arcade to stay relevant. Just Breed? What, did Shinzo Abe make this game? Duck Hunt. On NES. On this thing. It's literally a game you can't play. Even if this thing had AV cables to hook up to a CRT, are you supposed to buy some kind of USB gun? Those don't exist for this thing. I can't believe they wasted one of the 3,333 slots. Dynagear is pretty cool. Fatai Fury. Did you guys really mistake an I for an L 6 times? Here's Frogger. Can you imagine picking up this hulking beast just to play Frogger? Then again, they did make an arcade 1-up for Frogger. By the way, fuck arcade 1-ups. I paid $600 for the Marvel vs. Capcom 2 one, and MVC2 didn't have online for a year. The buttons were cheap, the marquee art was pixelated, and they put 2 Super Nintendo ROMs on here instead of the Punisher arcade. These things are way overpriced, and the only reason to get one is if you get it cheap and fully intend to mod it. This thing is leagues better than an arcade 1-up, and this thing still sucks. Gorby No Pipeline. Okay, I've been skimming over the NES games, but I gotta play Gorbachev's Pipe Dream. You know, I've been dogging on the mislabeling and the duplicates, but nothing can prepare you for when you get to the King of Fighters. There are 60 King of Fighters games on this thing. Over 30 of them are just KOF 97. How Mexican does this thing think I am? I mean, shit, KOF is a great series, but what the fuck is this? How is somebody getting into arcade games supposed to process this? I can't even find just regular KOF 97 in the 30 damn entries for it. How am I supposed to know what's different if I can't even find the original? If there wasn't enough King of Fighters before, you can also play the King of Fighters. All 37 of them. That's almost 90 different King of Fighter titles. Keep in mind, there are only 10 KOF games that came out for the Neo Geo, so that would be 10 versions of each game. Not only is it confusing, it's just annoying, because now the Ks and the Ts have a bunch of the same games that you have to scroll through. Even if you like King of Fighters, you'd have to write down what version you were playing, and whether it was King of Fighters or the King of Fighters. Lightbringer. Oh no! Mike Tyson's Punch-Out! Another NES classic. You know, I was wondering, if you're buying something like this, did you somehow miss out on all the different ways to play most of these games? Like, did you miss out on Xbox Live Arcade, Virtual Console, compilations, other bootleg systems, mini consoles, arcade archives, the Nintendo Switch Online, EverDrives, or even just barcades? Like anyone who wants to experience retro games at this point, they probably already did, right? Pachinko's Sexy Reaction 2. Thank you, Joe. I always wanted to play one of these sexy pachinko games. It's like an early version of Brain Rot. Never mind, I have no fucking idea what's going on. Search Eye is basically I Spy as an arcade machine. Wow. The Japanese really do have different tastes than us. This is like something you see in the newspaper, not a full-on arcade game. That's a lot of Street Fighter 2, about 18 in fact. This thing has SVC 2, but not CVS 2, which is the one everybody actually likes. Could this thing not handle a Dreamcast game? Third Strike is on here, so I don't know why they weren't able to put CVS 2 on here. Remember how there were 18 Street Fighter 2 games? Well, here are another 30 Street Fighter games, including the same versions of Street Fighter 2. Sonic 1 and 2 are on here, as well as Steets of Rage 2. Come on, guys. These and Golden Axe are the only Genesis games I could find on this thing, which is really weird. You'd think they could just load it up with Genesis ROMs, but no. Put in a bunch of Japanese text-heavy NES games. That's what the boomers buying this will want to play. Now we get to perhaps the most what the fuck thing I encountered on this thing. Supermodel. So there's a tantalizing preview, and when we select our characters, we have the Terminator, Uncle Fester, Robin Williams from Toys, RoboCop, the former president of Palestine, and Saddam Hussein. This is just the next Mortal Kombat DLC. I'm gonna go with RoboCop, obviously, and now I get to pick a woman. Back then, this game definitely made a stalker. It's the same gameplay as this game called Quicks, where you have to draw squares in order to fill out most of the screen. Only in this game, you have to avoid the butterfly, and you can draw around these little tiles for points or something. It keeps playing the opening riff to Pretty Woman, and it's so frustrating because they never get to the song.
All right.
And it doesn't even transition properly. It just abruptly cuts to the beginning. Oh, change? Okay. What the fuck? Why is it Hellraiser now? I guess when you beat a few levels with a certain model, they fall in love with RoboCop. This feels like an Andy Warhol painting. You then pick a new model and do it all over again. It gets way harder with these Medusa heads, and it's hard to gauge what will actually fill in. Which leads me to this middle square where I can't do a damn thing because the Medusas are flying around. The little tiles are fucking up my square drawing, so I just keep dying and dying and dying and dying. Apparently, this is actually the non-nude version of New Fantasia, which is from the same company. See, this is why video games are art. Where else can you be Saddam Hussein filling in squares to reveal sexy pictures of models that can also turn into Hellraiser? Yeah, fuck you, Braid. Guys, I'm starting to lose it here. Save me, So after going through the Z's, we reached the last few pages and... oh, god damn it. Get you someone who loves you as much as this thing loves Cadillacs and dinosaurs. This whole section is just a bunch of repeats of the Capcom arcade games. They're some of the best arcade games, but we already had them earlier in the list. Maybe they just wanted them to be closer to the top so people could just find them. A lot of them say 3P and 4P, so maybe these versions are for multiplayer. You know, if you want to plug in more controllers to this monstrosity, you can be like those old guys on the Amazon page. What's funny is that after the Capcom repeats, you get some classics like Tekken 2 and 3, Mortal Kombat, and NBA Jam. You know, just some of the most beloved arcade games of all time. At least you can search for them and they're not called the All-Sins. The last 4 pages of this thing are PS1 games. So you might be thinking Crash, Spyro, Tomb Raider, 102 Dalmatians, Puppies to the Rescue.
Hey, oddball, let's go dig for pirate treasure in the yard.
Is that Frankie Muniz? This is the oddest selection of PS1 games. I mean, instead of Toy Story 2, you have Toy Story Racer. It's good to see Pepsi Man on here. Look, I understand they can only have so many PS1 games since they are bigger games and obviously you can't do multi-disc games. But what the hell kind of selection is this? Billiards 3D? Our journey ends with a frickin' PS1 tennis game. Almost as strange as the first game on here. 89 Daniel Kundas. Well, that's this thing. Overall, I can't really recommend this device. Sure, it has some of the best arcade and NES games on here, but you could play these games on a web browser if you really wanted to fill a nostalgic hole. For something with 3,000 games, it has some glaring omissions like Capcom vs. SNK 2 and Marvel vs. Capcom 2. The Japanese NES games also bring this thing down by filling space and just having a bunch of shit you can't read. The controller and buttons are good quality, but the button layout option is way too confusing, and the default layout makes it weird to play certain games. The list is an absolute mess with duplicates, games under different titles, ROM hacks filling up space, and a strange selection of PS1 games that also don't work really well with this stick and button layout. I'd say if they shortened the list to get rid of the duplicates and the NES games, fixed the names so everything is in the right order and easily searchable, made the button config less confusing and customizable to each game, and they added a knob, this thing would be great. But as it is, it's a bulky contraption with some awesome games that aren't really worth the trouble finding, and you've probably already played them before. These things seem to be around $80 to $100, and if you're already going to spend the money, I would just buy a modded Wii or actually take the time to figure out a Raspberry Pi. I could see this as a gift for a little kid who can discover all the classics on here. You know, just make sure he doesn't find the sexy pachinko. That would be an awkward story. So Tim, what made you learn Japanese? I popped the top open and it had a weird smell. Must have been the soul of the Chinese factory worker. It just seems to be a basic motherboard with something that looks like an SD card. It seems to be soldered into the slot, so I can't get it out. Probably so you can't replace it with your own. And if that's the case, dick move. Although I probably shouldn't put this SD card in my computer. Still though, I can't even download the ROMs that they stole. On the Pandora website, you can buy these sticks. They're about $120 and they advertise different games, but they're all actually the same product. The $120 is just for the stick, and each of these listings are just advertising the different archive cards you can buy. The archive cards are just SD cards with a certain collection of ROMs, and each of these cards are $80 minimum. Are these cards soldered on too? You can also only choose 3 cards max, so even if you had the money, you couldn't get all the games. Not that you should, because the prices for these collections are insane. $80 for the Mortal Kombat card, and most of it is ports of the same 3 games? $120 for the Neo Geo card? Bitch, they pay you to take Neo Geo games. But then, you can also pay $80 for just the archive cards. 32 gig SD cards filled with ROMs. Okay, you guys are definitely pushing it now. From what I can tell, the Amazon listing is about $120, and it seems that one comes with the 30,000 games already. And you know what? If you haven't discovered emulation yet, that's a totally fair price for this thing. I don't know what they're smoking on the Pandora website though. Overall, Joe. I had fun with the machine, but it definitely has some major flaws that keep it from being a pick up and play experience. Mostly because I don't want to pick up and play this thing. Among the confusing as hell list, I did discover a couple of neat arcade games, but I also scrolled past a lot of mediocre ones. I'd say if you're thinking about getting an arcade 1-up, just get one of these instead. You'll save a lot of money and you'll realize you're not going to play this stuff as much as you thought. I love little devices that have video games in them, like the mini consoles, this little Neo Geo, and even the Nintendo Game & Watches. But we live in an age where a $50 Chinese handheld the size of a Game Boy can play Dreamcast games. Or the Steam Deck, which can play every video game before 2007 perfectly. And those things you can just take to bed and they don't take up a whole fucking table, Joe. I live in a studio. Fuck you. Thanks again for the gift.
Joey Jojo!